Welcome to the City of Grand Rapids Planning Commission hearing on October 24, 2024. We have one agenda item for today, which is to review the Bridge to Our Future Community Master Plan. And for that, we will hold a public hearing, at which time members of the public will be invited to come up to the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to share your thoughts with us. Do any commissioners have any conflicts of interest to share? No. Okay, then we'll begin.
All right, thank you all very much for your participation in this process. I know it's been a lengthy one, as any community master planning process might be, especially with the engagement strategy that we had to bring to where we are today. So we are very excited to bring forward the recommendations of this plan. We've worked very hard. Our steering committee members, our neighborhood connectors, our neighborhood facilitators in our first phase, as well as our neighborhood organizations, all took this plan and this process very seriously. We had a lot of opportunities for public engagement as we've previewed with you along the way. And I thank you for the time that you've all spent. I know it was a lot of work. Your participation, whether it was in the meetings. Thank you, Paul, for your participation on the steering committee as well. But I think overall today that we have a plan that is very reflective of the community feedback that we've heard through this process of those that participated. We're really proud of the way the strategy has come forward in terms of the participation levels are reflective of the community that we have, meaning that we've tracked the demographic data and we have really good representation, whether it was ward distribution, residency, race, ethnicity. I think age might be the only gap that we were unsuccessful in meeting the census data for the city of Grand Rapids, but that was specific to the 18 and 24-year-olds. We've talked about that before. A lot of interventions were tried to make up for that. Ultimately, those that participated were a little bit lower than the city as a whole. But otherwise, I think we should be really proud of the intentionality that we set out and we achieved, and I think the outcomes are reflective of that. So today, we're having a presentation by Emily at Planning Next. Some of this might look very familiar to you. However, as I mentioned earlier this afternoon, we wanted to make sure that since this is a public hearing, that we're very intentional about how we move forward and make sure that the community understands what the process is that has ultimately yielded a document that we have. Ultimately, we are hopeful that you will consider a recommendation to adopt the plan to City Commission. Know that the recommendation includes 11 prior area-specific plans that would carry forward as part of this process, and also 3 new area-specific plans that, of course, are included in your packet. And so with that, I will turn it over. Layla, do you have any comments that you'd like?
I think you covered it all. So we're just excited to be here. It's been a long process. The 63-day comment period went great. We received a lot of comments. Emily's going to go over a summary of those. You also have them in depth in your packet. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Emily.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Hayes with Planning Next. We are the lead consultant on the Bridge to Our Future process. Many of you have heard from me before, and I will preface this with a lot of the content has been provided in past plans, but we're trying to lay this out fairly deliberately as we go forward. So the presentation today will review the CMP process and our participation throughout, plan overview, including the framework and structure of the plan. For each chapter, I will also give you a summary of the comments that we've received. That's from this commission as well as public comments and staff review, and a summary of the plan revisions that resulted from that process. So to remind you, we have been working on this for years. The pre-planning started in 2020. Pre-planning really set the foundation for the process, and groups were formed to really reflect on the 2002 master plan and sort of understand where to move forward from that point. We've since gone through preparation, analysis, and plan development, and now we are into the adoption phase. We've had 4 rounds of public engagement with a variety of engagement techniques, everything from focus groups, meetings in a box, one-on-one interviews, open call, community workshops, online surveys. And so you'll see as we go forward sort of who we've heard from and what the comments were that we received. I want to remind you of the key issues that were identified in the RFP. So these are things that we identified very early on as priorities for the plan. You'll see them woven throughout. When we think about equity, we're really focused on opportunities to increase density and create small-scale infill projects that use local developers and champion development without displacement. There's a call to increase housing options and affordability in all zone districts and to provide safe, convenient, accessible, and affordable mobility options. There's also an intentional focus on safety as it relates to land use. Remind you that the master plan is a land use focused plan, and so this is about strategies through land use to address these issues. Environmental justice and health also came to the forefront, specifically around injustices in neighborhoods of focus. Those are the census tracts around downtown, and the social determinants of health, specifically tied to future industrial uses in some of these areas. Climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. This is obviously work that's being done by other groups as well within the city, but what are the land use policy changes that can help mitigate, adapt to climate change, and boost those efforts? And finally, economic growth, which was not specifically called out at that time, but looking at the 2002 plan and some of the engagement, we know that this is also a key component of the CMP. So as you saw in the process diagram, we had 4 rounds of engagement. They moved from generative, so brainstorming, to responsive, where folks were able to provide feedback on the direction of the plan, and we were able to test some of the bigger ideas that we were putting forward. This all focused on the topics within the purview of the master plan, but we worked to focus people at the neighborhood level, explain and understand their experiences in order for us to roll that up into citywide policy and direction. We did that through community connectors, neighborhood organizations, and steering committee members who were all able to reach out to their networks, their neighborhoods, and provide that insight beyond just the open houses that not everyone was able or interested in attending. We track participation using exit questionnaires during each round. So these are some basic demographic questions, help us understand who's participated and who we're missing, particularly after each round. We received 4,780 exit questionnaires. Of course, not everyone returns them, so this is an approximate number. But through the variety of formats, we received a significant amount of feedback, heard from people living in all 3 wards and a majority of neighborhoods. And engagement, including pre-planning, went from 2020 to 2024. So who did we hear from? This slide and the next couple are total participation, so this does include the pre-planning numbers that we have tracked. You'll see that the percentage is actually the participation rate among people who participate in the process. The pink line is the U.S. Census, so we're looking for somewhat proportional representation to understand that we've heard from a representative sample of folks in Grand Rapids. Race and ethnicity, we have a fairly proportionate share, as you see. Age, we in the past have presented this to show under 18 is that first bar. We acknowledge that we really didn't engage anyone under 5, so this has been adjusted a bit. Ages 5 to 17 are about 3% of the population, 5 to 14 are 10, and so that 13% is essentially 5 to 17-year-olds, and the majority of the participation we got from folks under 18 was the 12 to 17 range. As Kristen mentioned, there is a gap in the 18 to 24-year-old. This is something we tried at multiple stages to overcome, and unfortunately, we're unsuccessful. We also have a fairly even participation when we're looking at gender. Education, unfortunately, high school diploma equivalent and some college no degree fell a bit short. We are overrepresented in bachelor's degree and master's degree attainment. And finally, we did hear from folks in all 3 wards, as well as 12% of people participated living outside Grand Rapids. They may be people who go to school or work or have some other tie to the community, and therefore an interest in participating. So the plan framework is really driven from these 4 rounds of engagement. It starts with a community vision statement, which is an expression of the community's future. This statement was tested during round 2 of public engagement and carried forward through the process. From that, we have our value threads that reflect at a high level what the community cares about. These are woven throughout the plan chapters, and you'll notice if you've read through that the recommendations, many are tagged to these threads. In those cases, the policy, program, or action represented directly advances that value thread. You'll see here that equity, safety, and sustainability, which were some of our key issues, are 3 of those threads woven through the plan. The community goal areas become our chapters. So the goals are desired outcomes expressed in simple terms. Each of the goal areas, again, becomes a chapter. And here you'll see great neighborhoods, strong economy, balanced mobility. These are also key issues identified early on. Each of the chapters has a series of objectives that organize our recommendations. And as I mentioned, these are projects, policies, and programs that are intended to achieve these desired outcomes. So for each of the plan areas, I'll go through and give you sort of a summary of what's included in that chapter, as well as highlight a few significant changes from 2002 to the current plan, give you a summary of the comments that we received around that topic area, and I'll note any plan changes that occurred as a result. So great neighborhoods, we have 3 objectives: creating complete and stable neighborhoods, expanding the variety of housing types and price points, and integrating sustainable practices into development projects. For each of these objectives, we have a number of actions that work to advance that. Things like supporting the creation and preservation of affordable housing, allowing more housing types in all neighborhoods, and promoting accessibility and sustainability in Grand Rapids neighborhoods. The 2 changes that we've talked about previously, this was during our sort of first deep dive conversation, were 1B2 and 1B3 that talk about allowing a greater variety of housing types in low density residential districts and allowing higher density residentially, specifically in the mid-century and modern era neighborhoods. So we received a number of comments on this chapter, probably more so than any others. Overall, we received about 110 comments. I know that the sheet has been provided to you. Within this sort of topic area, there's a lot of conversation around density, so concerns about proposals to allow 4-unit and 6-unit buildings in low-density residential neighborhoods, concerns about traffic, safety, potential impacts to property values. There were also a number of comments that supported increased density and the desire for missing middle housing in all neighborhoods. There's also a theme of comments supporting more mixed use within neighborhoods and the importance of integrating retail and service-oriented businesses into residential areas. And we did receive comments that talked about the need to relax setback requirements. A lot of this is actually tied to the guidelines in Chapter 5. However, it is tied specifically to housing production, so I wanted to pull it forward into this chapter here. There were not significant changes to Chapter 1. We talked about a number of these things during your deep dive. A lot of the recommendations specifically advanced the desire to provide more housing, more types of housing, and address the affordability issue. So while all of these comments are noted and there are responses provided, there were not significant changes to the plan. Vital Business Districts also has 3 objectives: to support compact centers that provide a mix of uses, improve the accessibility of business districts, and to broaden and enhance opportunities for local services, amenities, and cultural assets. This really focuses on dense development along areas where there are bus routes or other transportation options available, supporting infill development, creating shorter blocks to make business districts more walkable. Some of the bigger changes in this chapter include support for raising the maximum height of commercial buildings in business districts. So that is buildings in the MCN and MON neighborhood classifications and the neighborhood office service district to encourage density. The plan also suggests requiring a plan for to encourage people to use modes of transportation other than driving when developments over a certain size are proposed. So this could potentially create requirements for new developments or alterations to buildings over a unit count or other threshold to provide a transportation demand management plan to account for that additional density. Comments really supported commercial flexibility in allowing accessory commercial units and live workspaces at all intersections, regardless of street designation. And strong support was shown for increasing the capacity of the corridor improvement authorities in order to enhance their impact on local districts. There is a recommendation to support CIAs, so this is already, I think, well documented within the plan. We did add some direction for updating zoning around the sort of small-scale commercial opportunities within neighborhoods. This is grouped in with a number of sort of potential zoning considerations for business districts. Strong Economies, Chapter 3, and that focuses on increasing the density of high-wage jobs and decreasing the wage gap, ensuring a wide range of residents can access jobs, and balancing economic growth with priorities for the environment. A focus of this chapter is really creating spaces for small-scale manufacturing and other sort of creative entrepreneurial activity, directing new life science and medical uses to the medical mile to encourage the efficiency and innovation of that proximity, improving broadband access, considering new uses for obsolete or underused buildings, and then promoting sustainable industries in the green economy. Some of the bigger changes here are really about repositioning and underutilized commercial and retail properties to support non-retail businesses. So this could be through expansion of the allowable uses in these areas to include things like research and development, other sort of light manufacturing that wouldn't impact nearby areas. And then considering creating, restructuring, or refining use categories that focus on impact within sort of a hybrid business use category, again, to create flexibility for some of these underused areas. We received very few comments on this chapter. There were a few that had a desire for live-work units everywhere. There were changes made to Chapter 2 that sort of addressed this, so there was nothing in Chapter 3 that specifically changed. However, we did add a recommendation through staff review to support the transformative projects identified by the Right Place as part of the overall economic development strategy for the city. Balanced mobility is about designing and maintaining streets that are safe for all road users, supporting viable transportation options that are affordable, accessible, and meet the needs of the community, and coordinating land use and transportation decisions. So the recommendations within this chapter really look to direct improvements to streets and intersections with high crash rates, promote transportation options other than personal vehicles, and invest in the infrastructure to support those modes. Reducing space for cars, such as parking lots, to really support that intention around compact walkable development, and to manage the way that that public space is used. Two of the biggest changes here talk about reducing minimum parking requirements to support compact growth, so allowing additional vehicle parking reductions or eliminations as an incentive to encourage infill development, especially in areas where there is good transit, streets that are meant to prioritize pedestrian activity within our neighborhood centers that are really meant to be the core of residential areas, and allowing by right reduction parking in more situations to expand that opportunity to waive regulations. Limiting the size of surface parking lots is also recommended, so that could be setting the maximum size on modified lots or restricting the creation of new surface parking. Within this chapter, we also received a number of comments around parking, some in support, some in opposition. Many of these things I know that you've heard many times. There was strong support for removing minimum parking requirements to support sustainable development, reduce costs for developers and for businesses, and to repurpose spaces for more productive uses. However, that's balanced with concerns for how eliminating parking could affect business viability and a general call for a balanced approach to parking in residential and business districts. There's also a high demand for connected, physically separated bike lanes, pedestrian paths, crosswalks, really emphasizing maintenance, safety, and usability. And then general support for expanding public transit options, improving connectivity, and reducing the reliance on personal vehicles. Again, there were very few significant changes here, mostly sort of tweaks to language for clarity, but no substantive policy changes since the last time we talked. Chapter 5 is desirable development character, and this is really where all of these recommendations come together. This chapter provides guidance on the physical development of Grand Rapids, and it has a few components. Development principles are statements that sort of guide the desired physical characteristics of new development. Future character and land use map, and the character types that are mapped on it that talk about sort of the building form, the uses, the mobility options, the open space that comes within each of those types. And then the conceptual development framework, which is intended to be an overlay or a companion piece to that map that talks about where investment should be specifically focused within nodes that are connected to transportation at key intersections, as well as significant corridors that should be enhanced to improve those connections. We received comments about the accessibility land use maps and concerns about the maps as published not being colorblind friendly, making it difficult to distinguish between character types, particularly on corridors where they're, just because of the scale of the map, smaller. And then support for compact neighborhoods. There was really positive feedback about the simplification of neighborhood character types, and emphasized the importance of maintaining sort of the distinctness of different areas while encouraging this density and infill. We are working to create an online web map that will help with that first issue, the ability to sort of filter the view so you can see where each character type is actually mapped. And so that will be, once this is adopted and publicly released, that will be the primary method for people to interact with that map. Wanted to highlight a few changes to the future character and land use map. The version on the screen now is the most up-to-date. The biggest changes came through schools and parks, and so that's the campus character type that we talked about at the last meeting. That's been significantly pared back. So all K through 12 schools have been pulled into either compact neighborhood or suburban neighborhood, along with all religious uses. And in suburban neighborhood, we did add language to note other civic uses to capture some of the sort of smaller businesses, schools, churches that are naturally sort of spread throughout those areas as something other than residential you might find within that character type. At one point, we did have a threshold for campus as areas with 10 or more acres, and we found that that wasn't really capturing it, so that language has been removed. So you'll notice there are only a few of those campuses left. And then we updated the neighborhood center character type to differentiate between how it's applied at intersections and along corridors. We talked last about how when it is applied along corridors, it almost looks like it's encouraging a strip commercial type. And really what it is that's the location where we encourage a lot of office, retail, higher density housing, and so it has a mix of uses that isn't specifically that neighborhood. And so the language now reads that the higher density is focused intersections around nodes, and that along the corridors, that's more for your sort of missing middle, higher density housing types, with the occasional neighborhood serving retail use where it's appropriate. There are also 3 area-specific plans being adopted in conjunction with the CMP. There is a chapter within the CMP that provides an overview of the 3 plans. It's just a spread that introduces the area, the future land use as applied to that neighborhood, as well as the goals within the chapter so that you can see what each one contains. The 3 areas are Creston, Butterworth, and then the Southtown neighborhoods. As we've mentioned before, the business district has already had an ASP that carries. We're focused particularly on the neighborhoods in Southtown. The ASPs align largely with the goals in the CMP, so you'll notice a lot of overlap in language and direction because these have been done in coordination. However, the ASPs do bring development down to a more fine-grained neighborhood level. Creston has 4 goals around affordable and inclusive growth, a lively and unique neighborhood, safer streets for bicycling and walking, and then revitalized and connected open spaces. There was a separate parallel process for engagement in each of these neighborhoods, so many of the ideas take the CMP ideas and policies, bring them down to that neighborhood, and then are informed by the engagement that happened through that process. So for example, within Creston, there's a focus on greening residential portions of Plainfield, establishing a community vision for the redevelopment of Riverside Middle School, which are topics that the CMP doesn't address kind of at that level. This gets us down a little bit deeper. Butterworth also has 4 goals around sustainable, equitable development, vibrant and thriving business community, safer, walkable and bikeable streets, and beautiful neighborhoods and healthy, active community spaces. Again, this is more focused on this area specifically, so while you'll see concepts like allowing for denser housing on key corridors, which is a theme throughout the CMP, there are specific recommendations about redevelopment of portions of the riverfront as innovation center and adaptive reuse of existing buildings with an art and maker focus that came through public engagement. And the Southtown Neighborhoods ASP focuses on development without displacement, a community built by all, for all, and preserving local culture. Again, you'll see things here about allowing for denser housing on key corridors and allowing a variety of housing types. But there are also ideas that came from the community about home repair programs, ways to preserve existing affordable housing, and pathways for residents to provide input on youth development. We did have an opportunity for people to comment on the ASPs through the website during the 90-day, during the public comment period, 63-day, sorry. We did receive some on Butterworth and Creston. Butterworth comments talked about insufficient parking for employees at Butterworth and Front, emphasizing that while biking and public transportation are encouraged, personal vehicle parking does remain essential for some of these businesses. In Creston, there were comments about traffic noise and speeding problems on Plainfield, exacerbated by recent construction, and comments really called for repaving, more greenery, increased safety, and so these comments have been noted, but many of them kind of fall outside of the scope of these plans. We also received some general comments, weren't necessarily tied to just one chapter, maybe overarching, maybe sort of within that other category. There were some comments around safety and infrastructure, so improved communication and enforcement of laws, particularly around crosswalks and bike lanes, notes that residents feel unsafe navigating current traffic condition, and an emphasis on the need for better protection for pedestrians and cyclists. As I've sort of mentioned, there were comments for both neighborhood preservation and new development, so comments expressing concern about potential changes to established neighborhoods, particularly where missing middle or multifamily housing would be introduced into a single-family neighborhood. There were calls for affordable housing and access, so people who commented advocated for guaranteed access to safe and affordable housing and expressed concern about the potential loss of affordable units. And then there were a number of comments about implementation, highlighting the desire for more precise measurable goals. I'll note that through the 63-day comment period, staff worked with all of the city departments who may have a role in implementation to review the plan, to assign responsibility, general timeframes, but with the 20-year time horizon, specific metrics are not necessarily the most appropriate way to track implementation, and so I know staff has a plan for reporting out as we go, but the implementation chapter has been updated to reflect those conversations. So just to summarize some of the changes to the plan as a whole, in the introduction chapter, there is a new overview section to highlight the bold changes by chapter and introduce the future character and land use map. This came out of comments that we get into character types and some of the chapter recommendations before you ever see the map. And so bringing that into the introduction and explaining the framework so that there's some context for some of the recommendations that follow in the early chapters. Within Chapter 2, which is Vital Business Districts, there is additional guidance for future zoning updates regarding home businesses, micro businesses, and live-work units in direct response to public comment. In Chapter 4, we did update Objective 4A to clarify the hierarchy of road users, putting pedestrians first. This came out of both public comments and conversation with Planning Commission. In Chapter 5, which is Desirable Development Character, the design guidelines were updated to clarify the intent and remove some redundant references. I noted in the Chapter 1 comments that there were concerns about the number of references to setbacks. That was used as an example of ways to meet multiple guidelines, and I think maybe overemphasized the importance in some ways, and so that's been cleaned up a bit to continue that strategy where it's appropriate, but to maybe lessen that sort of emphasis that was unintentionally placed through multiple strategies. There's also a new note with the conceptual development framework that talks about the methodology to create those nodes, what they are, why they're there, and how we came to those locations. And then finally, in the implementation chapter, there was a matrix completed following conversations with all the city departments. So where there was a hold to be completed, we now have full text. And that is all I have, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Emily. So just as a reminder, some of the feedback we heard during various engagement strategies was the feeling that maybe there wasn't enough specificity in the recommendations. And it's important to keep in mind that this is a 20-year vision, so it's a long-range vision. So we need to make it specific enough that it provides city decisions, but not so specific that it limits our ability to be nimble, to be able to address various community concerns or economic concerns that may arise over that 20-year period. So that's something that I think we struggle with, community struggles with, and so it's intentional to give us a little bit of flexibility there. So I just wanted to put that out there to make sure that that's understood. Also, I think it's really important that we remember that this is but one plan that the city has. I've mentioned this before. It's an extremely important plan. It affects our land use, our growth and development patterns in the city. But you'll note within the plan, this doesn't work in a vacuum. This has to work in partnership with many other plans that this city has. Specifically, community development has many actionable plans that they will use the community master plan to inform how they will allocate resources in the future. So that's a bit of an implementation strategy, but it shows how these plans work in partnership. Our economic development mobility strategic plan is another plan. So these build upon and complement each other, that this plan cannot and will not solve all of the needs and wants of a city, but it works in partnership. So there's a little bit of notes within the public comments about being outside of the scope of the authority of what a community master plan is. And then finally, the implementation process. We've made our best attempt to assign ownership and responsibility for who implements this, because we think that's a really important piece, of course, making sure that we have capacity and resources to implement the plan that the community has told us they would like. It is not the final document, meaning we know that, planning will play a key role in certain pieces of it, but we know that it's going to be done in partnership. So when we get into the zoning ordinance update, which of course is one of the primary implementation tools, we are going to be looking to our corridor improvement authorities, our community leadership, to begin building out specific changes that would be incorporated. So it's not intended to be a sole document that there couldn't be additions to it, but we wanted to make sure that we're transparent and that we assign ownership as to which department do we see would take the lead at this time. I had one more piece that lost my train of thought, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, and if I think of it, I'll bring it back up.
Great, thank you. On all the other plans and initiatives, what have we done to make sure that this plan is in alignment with all of those?
Yep, so When we first started this process, we had a robust engagement where we asked community to go through the existing area-specific plans and also the 2002 master plan, and went through all of those and said, are these still valid? Is this working? What needs to be changed? And the feedback we've received is that the area-specific plans are still valid. They still provide good direction. And so as we built out the recommendations of the current plan, we made every effort to make sure that there was alignment between the previously adopted area-specific plans. So they should complement each other. It's not easy or like for like, meaning the land use categories. Oh, am I interrupting you? Oh, the land use categories might be different, but that's true today as well. So we have the ability to work through and defer to the current or the applicable ASP, knowing that the underlying master plan do support.
And I would add to that, for the plans that are in the purview of other departments, we do have a table in the beginning, in the introduction chapter of the plan, that talks about how these plans work together, and it has some dots on it.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Emily or Layla or Kristen before we have the public hearing? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to share their comments. Make your way up to the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Brower. I'm here on behalf of the Coalition for a Safe and Healthy Roosevelt Park Neighborhood. There's a few representatives here with me today also. You might hear the acronym SHARPEN, SHRPN, Safe and Healthy Roosevelt Park Neighborhood. That's what that stands for. I also come in my capacity as the director of the Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association. The Sharpen Coalition is a group of residents, businesses, and organizations working together for a safer and healthier Roosevelt Park neighborhood and to end unnecessary commercial truck traffic in the Roosevelt Park corridor. For too long, residents in our neighborhood have been exposed to the burdens of heavy commercial truck traffic on Cesar Chavez, formerly Granville Avenue. These commercial trucks cut through the heart of our community, creating noise, air pollution, and safety hazards. As part of Sharpen, I want to be here today to advocate for the master plan update to include more intentional focus specifically on maintaining streets that are safe for all road users, as stated in Objective 4A in the Balanced Mobility Goal. Cesar Chavez Avenue was downgraded from a truck route to a major road in 2020. Despite this designation change, enforcement and signage has been lacking, and so the impacts on our community are becoming more severe because we're not seeing a reduction in truck traffic. The draft master plan states that previously adopted area-specific plans will continue to be valid with the community master plan update, and Granville Avenue had an ASP approved in 2017. And the reduction of commercial truck traffic was a very high priority in that plan. And so we would like to continue to see that be a part of the community master plan update. Although most of Cesar Chavez Avenue has undergone reconstruction and redesign to make it more uncomfortable for the trucks, we still see the trucks traveling through the neighborhood due to poor signage and lack of enforcement. Implementing and enforcing the ordinance now can help to prevent further deterioration of our neighborhood's infrastructure, reduce noise pollution, and most importantly, protect the health and safety of our residents. The Balanced Mobility Goal also states that prioritizing strategies such as education and enforcement that Grand Rapids can create and maintain a network of streets and that are safe for all road users. And so our coalition is asking for more follow through on that education and enforcement for that to be part of the community master plan update. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Bolden, and I am also here on behalf of the Coalition for a Safe and Healthy Roosevelt Park Neighborhood, or SHARPN. I'm here on behalf of the Urban Core Collective, but I also work locally with the Community Collaboration on Climate Change and a statewide organization called the Michigan Climate Action Network. And I am also advocating for the Bridge to Our Future Community Master Plan to include more intentional focus on maintaining streets that are safe for all road users, as stated in Objective 4A and the Balanced Mobility Goal. The continued presence of heavy truck traffic on Cesar Chavez is a direct contributor to the public health crisis that our community faces and due to systemic racism. Like many communities of color across the country, Roosevelt Park neighborhood is primarily a Black and brown neighborhood that has been disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards, including truck traffic. This is a textbook example of environmental racism, where communities of color are exposed to higher levels of pollution and bear the brunt of industrial activities. The large semi-trucks contribute to poor air quality, leading to increased rates of asthma, respiratory illness, and other chronic health conditions. These health disparities are evident in the Roosevelt Park neighborhood, one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in Grand Rapids. And this year, Grand Rapids metro area was named one of the 25 worst cities in the nation for ozone pollution, with an even worse grade than we had the year prior, which was 29th. If you want to know more, check out the American Lung Association's 2024 State of the Air report. Just for context, the San Antonio metro area, with a population of 2,600,073 residents, ranked 24th, and Grand Rapids, with a Grand Rapids metro area, which is Grand Rapids, Kentwood, and Muskegon, having a population of 1,432,000. We rank 25th, just under half of their population size, and we are nearly equal in emissions. The city of Grand Rapids has declared racism as a public health crisis, and failing to enforce the no truck route ordinance on Cesar Chavez undermines that declaration. To live up to the commitment, the city must take concrete action to protect communities of color, starting with enforcing this long overdue truck traffic change. The burden of communicating this should not fall in the neighborhood. And with what they already faced, it's a privileged mindset to assume they have more time and energy to put toward advocating for their own health. You have the facts, you have resident surveys, and you have sustainable solutions you can invest in today. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Sessa. I'm the Secretary for Strong Towns Grand Rapids, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of our organization. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on the draft of this master plan, and we really want to applaud the extensive citizen engagement that went into the plan, as well as the over 60 days of public comment period provided afterwards. One thing we particularly want to highlight and commend is the effort by the planning department and the consultants to engage almost 5,000 residents that are representative of the demographics across the city on race, age, and education throughout each of the 4 phases of engagement. This was no small task, and everyone involved in making this happen deserves a lot of praise. In each of the 4 engagement phases when we participated in, it was immediately clear how pervasive and strong the support was for change. Participants consistently expressed how much they love Grand Rapids and everything that makes our city great, and they expressed their hopes and dreams for a future with abundant, diverse, and dense housing interconnected with a safe and robust transportation network that prioritizes walking, biking, and transit over personal vehicles. We are glad to see these values represented in the plan throughout each of the 4 chapters, and the goals and objectives that are outlined align with our shared goals in great neighborhoods, vital business districts, and balanced mobility, with our goals for safe and productive streets, ending parking mandates, and incremental housing. Strong Towns Grand Rapids looks forward to participating in the zoning ordinance conversation, which will bring these visions and goals of the master plan into policy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ned Andre. I'm a resident of the 3rd Ward. Before you start my time, I wondered if I could just ask everybody to get to, do you guys have your plan up? Could you get to page 20 in your plan? I hope I have that right. It's the Homeowners Loan Corporation map, the redlining map. Is everybody there? I'm going to give them a minute. All right. As I said, Ned Andre, resident of the 3rd Ward. I want to talk a little bit about the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the redlining, that we often say, hey, redlining was this historical thing that happened. It was bad. It was a pattern across the United States, and it happened here in Grand Rapids. Redlining is still happening in Grand Rapids, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. A little bit of history about the 3rd Ward. The 3rd Ward, if you read the city charter, even to this day, it says that the boundaries of the 3rd Ward will go across Wealthy Street, so east to west, down Wealthy Street to the center line of the Grand River. And so then you follow that out of the city. Well, that would mean that all of these neighborhoods that you'll see on this map, there's a whole bunch of neighborhoods that used to be a part of the 3rd Ward that are no longer part of the 3rd Ward. Because if you know your history, first the highway came through and US 131 divided neighborhoods, and people want to talk about that being a historical thing of the past. The 3rd Ward is still divided by that highway. And then even worse, if you know that there was racial unrest all across the United States of America in the late 60s. And there was this whole series of racial riots. There were a lot of assassinations of racial black leaders that led to uprisings. And even here in the city of Grand Rapids, there was a race riot that went up Franklin Street and wound up right up at Franklin and Madison. And there was violence and there was fear and terror. And in reaction to that racial unrest, a new line was drawn for the 3rd Ward. The 3rd Ward no longer goes from Wealthy to the center line of the Grand River, but the 3rd Ward now ends in the north-south plane, ends at Jefferson to Burton to Eastern Avenue. And so this red line that was gerrymandered, Maps Matter, separated the 3rd Ward from the Division Avenue corridor, which should be the lifeblood, the economic lifeblood of the 3rd Ward. Wealthy goes to Division. MLK goes to Division, Hall goes to Division, Burton goes to Division, 28th Street goes to Division, 44th Street goes to Division, and then Division is a major economic artery. Division goes all the way across the 1st and 2nd Ward up to Plainfield, and it's all business all the way up that corridor. And when you head south down Division, you leave the city of Grand Rapids and you're going into Wyoming, but it's all business all the way up to 60th and almost 68th Street. And the 3rd Ward is divorced from that major economic artery. So I'm going to plead that the Planning Commission here, the Master Planning Commission, before you end your planning, take a look at the current redlining that is going on. We need to restore the 3rd Ward. It's a little above your purview, but certainly your recommendations would go a long way to say, hey, no wonder there's so much disinvestment. No wonder the 3rd Ward commissioners are often accused of helping develop the 1st Ward, because Division Avenue in our ward actually resides in the 1st Ward. And so we see this disinvestment. So please consider that.
Good afternoon. My name is Sini Gant Jordan. I am a 3rd generation here in the city of Grand Rapids. I love saying that because that means there's some type of sustainability here for us. Although that does not come without a fight, and what everyone has just spoken to, including Ned, did impact my family, especially there on Division. So, and that's a whole nother story. But I want to highlight the work that we have put into for the master plan. I am a co-chair for the master plan and enjoyed the work that we did, and we're very intentional about getting people engaged and informed about what's happening. So I think this was a great movement forward, and I hope this does pass with all the interest that was spoken to already. But I also want to talk about the racism that still exists, and that racism is a public health crisis that continues to be present. There's heavy traffic on Granville Avenue still. I am part of the Sharpen team. I am also the president of the Southwest Business Association, and my business is on Granville Avenue, and this heavy traffic has impacted my business, my family, and our residents in ways that it should not. We are asking and seeking assistance with calming down our truck traffic. I know there has been exploratory measures. There's other routes, Freedom Street and others that these trucks can take, and it's just not being paid attention to, but we have invested a lot of time, energy, and dollars into making a change, and we would like to see that carried out. So this public health crisis is a direct contributor to our public health crisis in the community, and we continue to face systemic racism. Due to these measures, the neighborhood has been disproportionately affected by environmental hazards. It includes the truck traffic, for sure, but there's other issues that we deal with as well, with the factories and there's a lot of brownfield land over there, and when things are being disrupted through development, that impacts our health as well. And then the 131 traffic as well. So we're stuck between Granville Avenue, on the west side, we're between 131, the rails, and the river. And so we are disproportionately impacted by all these negative surroundings. And we want to ask that in this master plan rollout, the implementation of it, that these things are addressed. Please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Janet Zahn. I am a First Ward resident and co-chair of the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition. We are a growing alliance of 95 member groups throughout the greater Grand Rapids area. We've been working for a number of years to mobilize local collective power in support of policy and action that will ensure a clean, healthy, and climate-friendly future for everybody. I come today and start by saying thank you for the great efforts that were taken to bring community voices to this process. I know a number of the people, including Saini, who spent a number of years ensuring that voices were being heard, and our group, the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition, has had a number of folks who have showed up regularly to submit comments, and we appreciated the opportunity to work directly with the consultants and the local team members and local staff members who were working through this process. We provided many suggestions, some of which I know have been included in the plan, but I would like to say that it feels like the plan does not take into consideration the larger city's goal, which is a 62.8% emissions reduction by 2030. And this document will have significant impact on our ability to achieve that goal. As a member of the Sharpen team, I want to echo the comments that were made by others already here about equity and human health. Environment and health were one of the key values stated in this document in the beginning of the presentation, and I would like to see a stronger visible nod, not just a nod to, but stronger policies that really do show that we want more green space to improve air quality. We want less truck traffic. We want more walkable cities. And I would say it feels like there's a pretty good approach to how we're making neighborhoods more walkable. But what about the green space element of it? That improves air quality and reduces heat islands. We want to make sure that this planning document is as comprehensive as possible to help the city as a whole meet the bigger goals and to work in coordination with the CAP that is also being written. Thank you so much.
Hi. Is this open to site-specific comment on like specific zoning changes that would apply? Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me and listening to some of my concerns. My name is Spencer High, and I am a resident of Grand Rapids and the president of the Grand Rapids Audubon Club. Please find this letter as formal remarks on behalf of the board of the Grand Rapids Audubon Club. As a well-established club with a long-standing history within the city, we strive to bring together people who enjoy nature, especially birds. We seek to protect and improve our natural environment and to advance nature education throughout West Michigan. The board of the Grand Rapids Audubon Club would like to express concern over the proposed housing development initiative at 1644 Ball Avenue Northeast, Hidden Bluff. The proposed housing development requiring a special land use permit raises concerns about the ecological impact that this would have on the surrounding area. The neighborhood brochure shows a rendering of the proposal appearing to show clear cutting and leveling of the property, eliminating connectivity within one of the largest remaining tracts of forest inside the city limits. This is home to red-bellied woodpeckers, barred owls, pileated woodpeckers, and many other species of wildlife that rely on large connected forests to feed, nest, and complete their life cycles. Multiple species reside in this landscape year-round, and it is used by many migratory species such as warblers, thrushes, and vireos at varying times of the year. Nestled nearby is Ball Perkins Park, a popular birding hotspot in the area. Birds, particularly migratory songbirds, rely on Ball Perkins Park for access to food, shelter, nesting, and support throughout migration seasons. However, fragmentation of the forest due to construction of condominiums, a new road, and supporting infrastructure could have a detrimental effect on the habitat as a whole and could negatively impact local bird populations. Large-scale construction can have compounding negative effects on wildlife who are already struggling to adapt to living in an urban landscape, and decrease the opportunity for the citizens of Grand Rapids to experience the beauty and awe that the natural landscape of West Michigan has to offer. A healthy habitat for birds means they rely entirely on the available natural resources. Currently, this stability is secure. Reducing habitat by destruction or disturbances means that food sources will be eliminated, places for shelter or raising their young may be lost, and population declines at a local scale occur. Please consider these recommendations. Although housing is a need for the city of Grand Rapids, so is respecting and protecting the natural state adjacent to parks, so birds and other wildlife may maintain the ability to live and thrive. We are proposing a detailed long-term environmental impact plan be pursued so that we can have a understanding of what the implications of zoning changes and development in this area would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. I apologize. I think I misunderstood your question when you talked about sites. I thought you meant zoning generally for sites. Just for clarity, that particular development is in process and has gone through with the development with us. It is not being presented yet before the Planning Commission. It's something that will come before the Planning Commission should the developer choose to pursue it. So I see Elizabeth standing there. Spencer, I'd encourage you to talk to Elizabeth so that way your comments can be forwarded to the Planning Commission, presuming the project moves forward and it could be applicable at that time.
Wonderful, thank you. I was given this date and time, and I was trying to figure out how it fit into this, but it's a greater planning thing.
I'm sorry. Well, thank you for your comment. Elizabeth's standing by the door. I think she can provide you with some good direction there.
Thanks for listening to me anyway.
Thank you.
My name is Edward Bolt. I'm a resident of the First Ward, and I too am a member of Grand Rapids Audubon Club, former president, and other offices. I'm here in support of what Spencer just said, and I would just like to encourage each of you commissioners to maintain a mindset that has not always existed, and that is to keep nature in mind whenever you're reviewing any project, and the importance of keeping animals, and in our case, birds around. To whatever extent is possible, The one thing that birds appreciate most is continuous tree canopy, large swaths of tree canopy wherever possible. And a close second is continuous land, untouched land connectivity. That is key to survival of the species on Earth. I am grateful for my career here, 40 years in architecture. I've been retired for several years, but I've grown to appreciate more and more the natural areas that we have. I just finished cut short a 2-hour, a long walk, a bird walk this morning at Millennium Park, and I'm always grateful for what I see at Millennium Park. Every week it's a different show. That would not happen if that were chopped up in segments. So keep nature in mind in all your decisions, even if it doesn't on the surface look like the project has anything to do with nature. Take a few walks in the parks. Thank you much.
Good afternoon. My name is David Yaka, and I'm a resident of the Ottawa Hills neighborhood and also board chair for the Green Infrastructure Foundation, which is a 501c3 promoting and advocating for living systems, nature-based practices, like the gentleman that just spoke. So I would support what he just shared with you. And I just want to express the need and importance of emphasizing the green infrastructure aspect of development, redevelopment, and adaptive reuse of vacant, underutilized spaces in our city. And it's such an opportunity. The master plan, and it's already been shared here, is one of a number of plans and tools to help implement a new future that brings nature back into our cities in a more profound way for the benefit of every resident, but also but not the only one by any means. The one thing that struck me is and I really like. There's a lot of good things to the plan. I'm really in support of, including walkability and some of the principles. I think the place to get at how to lead the way to better integration of sustainable practices is in the neighborhood scale, the area plans. And I haven't studied the 3 that are part of this plan well enough, but I think a level of detail around water management, around how that integrates with retrofitting and adaptive reuse of all of our public rights-of-way and streets and paved surfaces and those opportunities, along with planning for how to implement and steward and manage these living systems. And I know it's just not an addition to the city department. There's multiple strategies for how these systems are to be not just installed, but also maintained and stewarded so that to optimize their performance. So just encouraging stronger language in the master plan, and then further tie-ins to other planning tools and documents to rapidly advance these best practices. And I know that the city's climate action and adaptation plan is in draft form, and making the same suggestion there that's strongly reinforce these nature-based practices. There's a lot that has been done in other communities to provide cooling, air quality, some of the things that others have mentioned, as well as other positive health impacts that we would all benefit from. Thank you very much.
I'm Dale Hotelling, Second Ward appointee to the steering committee for the master plan. We've built a very structural bridge to the future. I think the comments are all valid that have been made this afternoon, and I thank each person for doing that. I think it's important to remember that this is not a document that's created in stone, but it's on paper in electronic form, and it is changeable. And I know that the plan is for like 5-year reviews and revisions and more often as necessary, so that all of these concerns that have been brought can be considered each time. Keep bringing the concerns also. I think the hard work of preparing this document is complete. I think the living with it is going to be the next 20 years. And the real hard work is doing the nesting with the other departments and plans to create a usable document. I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in this process. It's been a great experience for me. I think we're going to have in long term, I think we're going to have a healthier, happier Grand Rapids as a result of this.
Good afternoon. I'm Jay Fowler, resident of the Heritage Hill neighborhood, and I like the theme Bridge to the Future. I'm a bridge to the past. I had the privilege of working here on the 9th floor in the planning department for quite a number of years. And when I started in the planning department in the 1970s, our master plan was written in 1963. By a bunch of white guys sitting around a drafting table, I think. And it had very much automobile orientation. It had areas identified, as somebody else said earlier, maps really matter. Had areas identified as community redevelopment areas. These were neighborhoods to be wiped out and redeveloped. And it really took a lot of effort over the years to counteract those types of themes, and I think the city of Grand Rapids has done a fantastic job of doing that and creating a new bridge to the future, preserving vital neighborhoods, creating streets that are pedestrian and bicycle oriented, so I wish to offer my congratulations to the Planning Commission and the committee and the staff for having completed this great process.
Anyone else who would like to comment on the plan? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Since Dale and Sini both came up to the mic, I just want to call them out, not only as steering committee members, but steering committee members that showed up regularly and had a lot to contribute, but also, I thought, had a great posture of also listening and contributing. So thank you both. Is there anything the team would like to respond to from the public comment?
I can respond, and I'll try to start at the top. So I think generally we would agree enforcement of the truck route is important to us as well. I have been phoning a friend in the back there with Mobile GR, and I know that there is some additional signage that's coming to help make sure that we communicate who the users are. I think enforcement is a separate issue, meaning that there's some additional communication that's going to be needed, some additional infrastructure changes that will help change behavior, meaning making it more difficult for a truck to navigate through. If the Planning Commission feels that the language between what we currently, and education, of course, is also a critical piece of that. Between the Granville area specific plan and the community master plan, I believe that there is language in there that supports all of the comments that were made, but if there feels like there's an opportunity to strengthen that, I'm certainly open to your feedback there. In terms of the Ned's comments about ward distribution. He and I have spoken a little bit on this as well, and this is not within your purview. It is a city charter component, but certainly welcome that conversation with Ned. There was comments about the carbon reduction and tree canopy. Those are all within this plan. The tree canopy goal is reinforced through language within the proposed draft. The carbon reduction emission down by 62%, that is also in the plan, supporting that citywide goal. I think Layla had it. If page numbers are necessary, I can point you to that as well. Not that I could read it in Layla's text. Page 24 is where we have that language for the emission reduction. In terms of the Climate Adaptation and Action Plan, there is a recommendation within your community master plan that fully supports the implementation of that plan. I believe that language is strong enough. We don't repeat what is in the CAP plan. We simply state that we support those recommendations and efforts to be part of the implementation work. So again, if the Planning Commission doesn't feel that language is strong enough, you can let me know, but those were all important elements that were raised and considered, and I do believe that they are clearly supported through this process, albeit sometimes it's a reference to, so that we don't have a 164-page document turn into a 400-page document. It's just a very clear recommendation that we fully support the CAP plan in that case. And I think those are all the elements that I wrote down that needed or that could be addressed. Layla or Emily, anything addition? Okay. So again, looking for your direction if you feel like the language could be modified.
Might be overly influenced by having just gone to New York City and spent 2 days walking over 20 miles, enjoying both the density but also the tremendous park land that city has. And was it not fair to say that the two do go hand in hand?
The parks master plan?
And the density?
Yes.
Because I think when you are anti-density, maybe you're not using land very efficiently, which then makes it harder to have shared land.
Yes.
So I think there is consistency in our master plan in both of those ways.
I would agree.
I really appreciate all of the comments. I think I don't think it changes, but the master plan as it stands today, but reinforces the fact that the Planning Commission is not the only entity that needs to be paying attention to this. It underscores the fact that our traffic, road design, parks, and all of that also have to be a part of it. And I think for us, I look forward to those next steps of implementation so that this paper, and we don't lose sight of the goals in the minutia, but make sure that the minutia supports the goals. I did want to add one thing about the folks that spoke about Cesar Chavez Street. I was there recently, well, maybe a month ago, and it is so torn up you couldn't get anywhere, blah, blah, blah. I would hope that when we are planning a major reconstruction of a street, that we are looking at, okay, what did we want? We didn't want trucks, we want pedestrian-friendly, traffic calming, and that is that residents have a method of having input on what that design looks like. And I know that's sort of retrospective, but it just points to the importance of us keeping all of this in mind in every single aspect of what the city does and committees do and other efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. So absolutely, this plan is not solely the responsibility of the Planning Department. It informs operational plans, it informs capital improvement plans, and it will inform our strategic plan. So those are some of the next steps that we have. When we met with the different departments, based on the recommendations that we heard from the community, we didn't give them the option to scale it back because they said, oh, we don't have the money or we don't have the staffing for that. The approach was, this is what the community wants to see, and therefore you need to begin thinking about how you're going to implement it, what resources you're going to need. Now, of course, it's not all going to happen in the immediate short range, 1 to 5 years. It's a long range plan, and so that's something that we had a very intentional discussion with our colleagues in other departments. This absolutely will inform future construction projects. I know the one you mentioned was a particularly difficult road construction project. It has since opened, I think a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But when the initial concepts come through, it comes through what's called a city design team. And from a planning department perspective, we use both the area-specific plans as well as the master plan to inform the feedback that we give. From there, it does go through a community engagement process. It's part of the Vital Streets work that we have, where we do meet with business owners and residents. That's not all to say that that process takes away all of the challenges or the pain points associated with reconstruction, but in terms of influence in informing the project, these are absolutely related.
Are we still asking questions or just making comments as well?
Discussing, but if you have questions.
Oh, okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, especially as it relates to the sustainability and environment piece. I'm born and raised in Heat Island, Detroit, Concrete Island. City boy, I always consider myself a city boy. And when it comes to sustainability and environment, it's something that I never thought about until, of course, I moved out of Detroit and realized that one of the largest oil refineries is in my backyard. The Michigan Environmental Agency considers 48217, the neighborhood I grew up in, to have the most toxic soil in the state. And since Father's Day, just because I wanted to get outside and explore, I started going to a new park in Kenton, Ottawa County. Every Saturday morning, 7 a.m., I'm at a new park, walking around, walking the trails. It's fun. It's beautiful, except for the mosquitoes. And I started to think that the other thing that I never thought about growing up is that to have those kinds of experiences, I've got to get away from neighborhoods where the people who look like me live and go to neighborhoods that I have to drive my car to, that I can't walk, that I can't bike. And obviously, right, my kids are going to have to do the same. So if I want to live in a neighborhood where people look like me, then I won't be able to experience that. And then in order to experience that, it's better to live closer, right? If I want to do it as much as I do it and pay that high gas price in order to get there, it's better to live closer, which then takes me out of the neighborhoods that I'm raised in. So I said all that to say this. The environment sustainability piece is definitely something that I'm thinking about more today than I ever have. To me, it is extremely important. And that said, I do like what we've done with the master plan. Like one of the speakers said, it's not set in stone. It is a map. It is a guide. We update, we input, we do all of the things. And with that said, I know what it feels like to always have to be in a position where you feel like you have to fight. And that goes back to my grandmother marched with Dr. King. So all of my life I grew up, we got to fight. I think the environment and sustainability is one thing that I'm tired of fighting about. I just want to stop over polluting black and brown neighborhoods. I want people to be able to live in nice houses, go to nice stores, while also being able to have parks and recs in the neighborhood that they live, and not feel like you always have to travel in order to experience pure Michigan. But you can do it. You can walk there. You can bike there. I want kids to be able to cross the street after school without worrying about where the next truck is coming from. I want people to be able to walk through an alley at night without having to worry about where the next gun is coming from. I want to send my kids to school and not have them worry about if the next gunman is coming in today. So all of the things, and I like that our master plan does address all of those big things where we want our city to go in 5 years and in 10 years, and it includes voices of every community, of every walks of life, that we can update, that we can change, that we can prioritize. And so those are my comments. I want us to move as a city with sustainability and the environment in mind. I mean, this is Grand Rapids, for God's sakes. So I want us to move with that in mind. And I don't want us to have to fight about it. We already know it's a problem. I want us to move forward knowing that it's a problem and being serious about addressing that problem. And thank you.
So I don't know how to go after that. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into this over the last 4 years. I came into this late, so I've only been on this commission for a year or so. So I appreciate the effort. I appreciate all the public comments and the additional perspective, some of which I didn't have previously. And I also appreciate the fact that the master plan is a general guide, right? So I've said it multiple times in this process, really excited about digging in and developing the zoning ordinance or whatever I can influence to see how this is really going to come to fruition, right? And how we're going to design for people first. And I think that designing for people first really helps to solve almost all of the concerns that were brought up today. So really look forward to digging into the details, appreciate all the efforts from consultants, city staff, planning commission, steering committees, the general public. So if it's not obvious, I'm in support of this and look forward to moving on to the next step.
I just wanted to acknowledge the staff, the consultants, fellow commissioners. This has been a long process, and I think in the end, what's come out of this is a really good, thoughtful master plan that it's a guide to what we can do next. I have also said that many times, that this is kind of the overarching ideas of where the community and staff, commissioners, where we would like to see. It's the bird's eye view, no pun intended, for my Audubon people out here, of what our vision is for the next 20 years. And there were very good comments today and questions raised, and I appreciate those, and not just here today, I should say all along. The engagement with community, I went to several of the meetings. It was very exciting to see how many people showed up, participated, and that are that passionate and excited about our city that we live in. I moved away after college, like many of my friends, and I came back. And I came back about 15 years ago, and there was no other place I would rather be. And I think it's really fantastic that There are so many forward-thinking individuals and in our community, and people that care enough and are passionate enough that are volunteering their time, taking time away from their families, maybe bringing their families along. I know I brought my daughter to an event to see that it doesn't matter if you're 2 years old or if you're 102 years old, you are a part of this community. And for a master plan to be put together like this with so much input and so much passion, this makes me really excited and charged up. And I'm excited to see what comes next and the next steps, the strategic plans, the other community plans or other organizations or things that pop up around this that can help steer us for the next 20 years. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for your comments. Speaking of some of the next steps, obviously the work is never done. And from a planning department perspective, one of our major next steps, of course, will be the update of the zoning ordinance, which is one of the more significant tools to implement this work. I think in the planning department, we worked really hard to put community first throughout this process. When we developed the request for proposal, we looked to the steering committee who had 4 members that could decide what consultant would be best for our community. So we really tried hard to let the steering committee, let the community decide how this process should go. And we were humble enough to acknowledge that when missteps happened through the process, we needed to dig back in. Janet's team, for example, was a tremendous support for us to look at the sustainability work because we knew that sustainability, climate adaptation mitigation was a key concern through our phase 1. So we knew that, and we made sure that that was embedded throughout the plan. We worked really hard to do that, but we recognized that I am not an expert in that space. Janet and her team and our sustainability group, those are experts. And so we were able to make sure that we called in the expertise when we needed it, be humble enough to acknowledge that we needed to do differently. We needed to shift. We had to pivot on maybe some of our processes, even right down to the implementation or the adoption process. We looked at it and thought, you know, when we reviewed it, maybe we went too quickly, what we initially had envisioned. And we realized we needed to take a step back and we needed to have these intentional conversations with the Planning Commission through your deep dives, which were several hours apiece. And so really making sure that we had that opportunity for community input to know, did we get it right? Did we get it perfect? I don't know, but I think it's a good plan. I think we had great support throughout this process, and we had a steering committee and an engagement strategy that, at least based on the data, tells us that we're heading in the right direction. So I really appreciate all of the thoughts that you have, and if there's any follow-up questions or additional guidance, we would be open to that.
Thank you, Kristen. And while we're contemplating that, we have another steering committee member who didn't quite make the public hearing, Isaac. So if you want to address the commission, you're welcome to.
No, I was in the elevator when you posed it up. I've been to a few of these now, and normally you don't, you had us talk at the end of your business, so I thought I had some time. My name is Isaac Graff. I live in the Ward 1, but I had the pleasure of serving on the steering committee as representative of Link Up Nonprofit Housing Corporation in Ward 3. I want to echo, a lot of the comments I heard from public commenters already, and as well as Commissioner Williams. I really appreciate what you just said earlier, and it's hopeful, brings me great hope to hear you on this dais saying those things. I think my big comments are looking at implementation and how we're going to prioritize. There's so many recommendations how we prioritize what's going to happen, and realizing that our neighborhoods and our communities of color in the southeast side need that investment. So there's a number of great recommendations in here, but I think recognizing that It takes dollars to do a lot of these things, to make a lot of these things happen. I know this body isn't necessarily the one allocating those, and I will be saying the same things to City Commission here next month. But just remembering that engagement doesn't stop now. The consultants are done and go home and the contract's up, but we need to continue to engage the community, be transparent about how we're spending our money to implement this thing so community can say if, yes, this is representing our vision or not. And yeah, continue to bring all those other departments and stakeholders to the table so we can, achieve all the things, all these aspirational goals that we've laid out. And I think that's it. I was a little off the cuff, but thank you for giving me that time.
Well, I just appreciate all the work that went into developing this plan. I too want to echo a lot of what my fellow commissioners have said and thank the staff and the consultant team for all the work that went into this, and thank our chair, Commissioner Roseboom, for representing Planning Commission on the steering committee and all the other steering committee members as well. But I really want to thank all of you that have participated in this process and the members of the public that committed their time to contributing to this and challenging the status quo and making sure that this plan does reflect the desires of our community moving forward. So thank all of you for participating in this process. And I too am really looking forward to diving into the nitty-gritty of implementation and the zoning ordinance and things that we do have some purview over here. So thanks to all of you. And I'm happy to make a motion if we're ready for that. All right, let's see what I can do here. I'm gonna take off my glasses because there have been times where I stopped wearing eye makeup after a particularly disastrous motion reading a few years ago. All right. Well, yeah, all the makeup just ran in my eyes. Okay. Whereas the city aspires to build a sustainable city of inclusion where people in all neighborhoods have the opportunity to live in safe and affordable housing, to move throughout the city in a variety of ways, to earn a living wage through meaningful job choices, and to gather in vibrant spaces that celebrate our unique cultures and histories. And whereas the city desires to create a community master plan that builds community pride and defines a long-range vision for the future, typically 20 years, and whereas the City Planning Commission is designated to lead and recommend to the City Commission any master plan in accordance with MCL 125.3801 under Act 33 of 2008 as amended, and whereas the Planning Commission, with guidance from a 50-person steering committee made up of individuals reflective of the city with regards to race, ethnicity, gender, geography, sector, and disability status, helped to create and conduct robust community engagement and outreach over the course of 4 years, which resulted in over 4,700 participants engaged. And whereas the previously adopted area-specific plans shall continue to be valid with the community master plan and future character and land use map. And whereas this community master plan and future character and land use map shall supersede all other earlier land use plans with the exception of those before mentioned. And whereas the culmination of that work resulted in a draft community master plan entitled Bridge to Our Future, which includes area-specific plans for the Butterworth, Creston, and Southtown neighborhoods. And whereas the final community master plan and future character and land use map and new area-specific plans incorporate applicable comments received during the 63-day comment period from the public, city staff, and the planning and city commissioners. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Planning Commission does hereby approve the Community Master Plan and future land use map, including the 3 area-specific plans, as presented and amended on October 24th, 2024, and declares that the Community Master Plan, including the text, figures, and maps, shall be a basic policy guide for the future development of the City of Grand Rapids. Be it further resolved that the Planning Commission recommends that the 2024 Community Master Plan and future land use map be forwarded to the City Commission for their acceptance and approval.
Support. Oh.
We have a motion and lots of support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Any further discussion amongst the Planning Commission?
Just one. I wonder if we can, for the map conversation from one of the public comments, I don't think that's under our purview, but I wonder if there is a place for discussion on that map, because I thought that was a very valid concern.
You mean the ward?
The ward, yeah. The ward
Yes.
map.
So if you could give me the opportunity to think on that and maybe consult with the executive office and our attorney to figure out how that would move forward, I would appreciate that opportunity if that's okay with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, definitely.
And certainly if that is something that we have a discussion, I would be happy to let Ned know. We exchanged numbers today.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
As is our custom at the end of our meeting, we open up for public comment. So if there's anyone who would like to address the commission, you're welcome to come up to the microphone and do so. It's a lot better if you're on the mic.
We need
for
our recording secretary to hear you, Ned. The infinite wisdom you will share, we need to be able to record it.
Ned Andre, Third Ward resident. I'd forgotten to say thank you when I came up earlier. I do thank the Planning Commission and all the hard work that went into this. I joined a lot of the Community Connector events, and so I was able to get my input in there. I see it in there. And this whole redlining, I got to that too late to get it in. And it doesn't necessarily fall in your purview, but I see that you guys are aware of the historical redlining, and this Third Ward redlining is omitted, and it's still impacting my community today. And you already know in 2018, when the $1.3 billion was invested in the city of Grand Rapids, only $20 million went to the Third Ward, and $1.28 billion went to the First and Second Ward, and that redlining plays a significant portion in that. So if we want to do things, if we want to fix the Third Ward, we got to put some real intentionality into restoring the ward to its original city charter mandate. But thank you. That's what I came up to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll close the public comment period and say thanks to our fearless leader, Kristen. And we are adjourned.